The podcast you're about to hear was made with Ankr. You can use Ankr to make a podcast right from your phone, no experience necessary. Plus, it's completely free. Get the app at anchor.fm/podcast.
All right, hey, welcome guys. My name is Sam Demery, hosting the Fort Worth CEO podcast. This is my first podcast ever, and I believe the first business podcast inside of Fort Worth and maybe even the DFW area. So very excited to bring on today's guest. Real quick about the podcast. I'm excited for the podcast because I think it solves a very relevant issue in Fort Worth's business landscape today. And that is there's not enough media sources that are covering specific challenges and specific issues that the Fort Worth business owners are facing. So the goal with the Fort Worth CEO is to have very organic, real conversations with business owners and CEOs inside of Fort Worth and hopefully dive deep into the mental frameworks behind how they're solving specific local Fort Worth business challenges. So very excited to bring on our very first guest. All right, so this week our guest is Brandon Hurtado. He is the president and owner at Ankr Agency. Ankr is one of Fort Worth's fastest growing marketing agencies. And I'm excited to bring Brandon on because he has a specific focus inside of video marketing. And after having many conversations with business owners about where they're allocating their resources in the marketing world, you'd be surprised, there aren't a whole lot of business owners that are pot committed all in on video marketing. And so I wanted to have a real organic conversation with Brandon just about what he thinks about the video landscape and what's the state of the union in the marketing world as a whole. And then, of course, if he was a business owner, what percentage of resources would he allocate towards video marketing versus some of these other channels? So very excited to introduce Brandon, and let's get right into it. Just to dive into the first question here, for some of those older local business owners that haven't really bought into the idea of video marketing, I know at Ankr you guys focus on video, including lead generation and recruiting videos. I mean, you've got all of these different possibilities with video. So what are all the ways a local company can use video to create content?
That's a great question. We really look at our clients' overall business objectives and try and create social marketing goals that match back to that. So like you said, it really depends on the industry, it depends on their overall digital strategy. But some of the ways that we use video marketing for our clients is to generate leads for them, to help recruit maybe independent salespeople or recruit an inside sales force. We also use videos for brand awareness, for customer service, things like that. I mean, they're just building trust in general. I think videos serve a great purpose for that. But there's a lot of different goals and objectives that you can pursue from the business side whenever you're looking at video marketing.
Got it. And it's always tough, man. It's always tough to ask marketing professionals specific questions about where the business owner should be allocating their resources, their time and money in marketing channels, because like you said, I mean, there are so many different options that you've got to know a lot more information about your client or your prospective client before you can start giving them advice on where they should deploy their resources. But I'm just curious if you have any maybe strategic macro insight on for some of these businesses that have minimal funds to deploy against marketing for lead generation purposes, what percentage of those resources do you believe should be allocated towards video content rather than written or audio, assuming that they've bought into the idea of content marketing?
Sure. Well, I think that also depends a lot on the ability to create great content, especially when it relates back to video. So if you're a business owner like a restaurant and you're just completely swamped running your business, you don't have time to put out video, obviously, the amount of investment you're going to be able to make in video marketing is going to be restricted by your own resources internally, not even budget. But I think if you actually have the time to invest in video, you've made the decision to do so, roughly 30 to 40% of the content that you put out should be video marketing related. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to create 30 to 40% of your content has to be video content coming directly from you, but maybe you can curate other people's video content and share from other places, and that's still going to help out your marketing presence overall. That doesn't necessarily mean that, like I was saying, that you have to go out there and be producing and editing videos 30 to 40% of the time. But I do think that having a really good mix, one, it builds retention, keeps people on your social channels, keeps people on your website. The more video you have, which is going to indirectly impact the average watch times that you have on your videos. It also impacts how long people are spending on your website, and ultimately who's going to buy from you and who's going to end up purchasing from your brand.
Got it. And Brandon, this is kind of like a bite-sized chunk of an interview. It's not a 30-minute interview. It's a 10-minute interview. So the final question is, if I'm a business owner and I've bought into the idea of social media marketing and video marketing, and I'm on Google search and I'm looking for the top agencies inside of Fort Worth, and I see Ankr is one of the top 10 agencies, what makes Ankr a little bit different in the Fort Worth marketplace?
That's an interesting question as well. And I do know several other agencies personally, and even other video marketing agencies. And I think the one thing that makes us stand out the most is that we're not an ad hoc marketing firm. So our clients don't come to us and say, hey, we need a video, or we need a website built, or we'd like for you to create some social content for us. We really have like this long-term relationship that we like to build with our clients, and we control every aspect of user experience for them. So from creating videos to understanding how customers are interacting with those videos and ultimately creating conversions based off of that. We're very analytical, so that everyone here has a good understanding of Google Analytics and Facebook Insights, and understand like how your customers are interacting with your brand and where they're coming from, so that we can attribute ROI ultimately in the end. I think a lot of other agencies, Fort Worth, Dallas area, they're just focused on making a really good video, or doing this or doing that. And they're not really getting like the big picture of what that means for your brand and how it's translated into ROI.
Got it. And last question, Brandon, if I'm a business owner and I've listened to this podcast and I start thinking, you know what, I want to learn a little bit more about video and figure out what the next steps are in terms of how I can taste each of these different channels that we were talking about with lead generation and attracting and retaining top talent strategies with recruiting, with videos via recruiting. What resources would you recommend I check out if I'm just getting started with learning about video marketing?
Well, the first thing I would do is listen to the Fort Worth CEO podcast.
I'll pay you after the podcast, Brandon.
I think HubSpot really has some pretty great resources on their blog. Just if you're getting started, you don't really know where to go, HubSpot has a ton of content on how to just really take baby steps in creating video content for your business. There's also some great podcasts out there. Video Marketing 2.0 is one that I listen to a lot. But the one, if you just had to pick one, there's a guy out there named Dennis Yu. He owns a company called Blitz Metrics, and he is like a mentor to me. I've been to a ton of different conferences that he's spoken at. He consults for clients like Rosetta Stone, Golden State Warriors. He is the guru of 1-minute videos. So if you're a business owner, you're looking for a place to learn how to get started and really make a difference in your business, look up Dennis.
All right, guys, really appreciate you taking the time to listen to the very first podcast of the Fort Worth CEO. Brandon, really appreciate your time. That was a great first of many, hopefully, podcasts here on the Fort Worth CEO. If you have any questions and want to reach out to Brandon, his email is brandon@ankragency.com, ANKR Thanks again, guys, and stay tuned for next week. We've got 3 or 4 interviews coming up that will be published by next weekend. Thanks, guys.
The
podcast you just heard was recorded with Ankr. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.